Shut up, man. Get that, you retard?
Now, many people in this community believe that Ansari's death was a hate crime because she wore a hijab or a head covering.
What's that? Hey, come on. Why? Shut up. Come out.
I'm right here. Look, man.
Hey, go get back here. Get back here.
Correct dude. I caught one. Take a picture. Nice.
I don't care if you're here first, you little spaz. Just shut up. No one wants to hear you. You're not going to watch TV.
Hate crimes are a little bit different just because of the psychological impact. You could even compare it to 9/11. That could be perceived as a hate crime against America.
Well, a hate crime under the California Penal Code is actually a civil rights crime. And it is the only crime where the prosecutor must prove to the jury or the court the motivation of the defendant in committing that crime.
Motivation describes why the particular individual did what he did. Is it because of some class of people that he's associated with? Is it because of some organization? Is it because of how he was raised? You don't know that. That's what you're trying to determine as to why they did what they did.
Well, in my opinion, a hate crime is much worse than a typical crime. If you've got a robbery, it's a bad crime to begin with. But if a robbery has occurred because of hate motivation, well, that's about as evil as you can get. I mean, there may be somebody who's robbing somebody because they need money, and there's a huge difference between doing that, in my mind's eye, and somebody who's robbing somebody because they're targeting them, because they hate them. It's a deeper level of hate, of evil. And I think as a society, we need to step up and recognize that and see to it that we do everything we can as law enforcement, that if somebody really is that evil where they're targeting somebody simply because of the way they look or the way they walk or the way they talk, then we need to do something about it. Society needs to know we're going to do something about it.
I'm Mark Bailey, and today we're going to talk about something so powerful it takes only one person to threaten and terrorize an entire community. Hate crimes. Hate crimes are message crimes. They affect not only the initial victim, but the family and the community of that victim. Hate crimes are truly random acts of sometimes unspeakable violence.
Hate crimes are really damaging in four ways. And we can see this if we look at the biggest mass hate crime in the history of the United States, 9/11. It murdered a lot of people, just like any other. So in that sense, it's just like any other murder. It traumatized those who survived much more than most other murders would. It traumatized all of us because we were attacked as Americans, and it led to retaliatory hate crimes. After 9/11, for 9 weeks, there was a mass wave of hate crimes against people who were perceived to be Muslims, whether they were or not. So that's why hate crimes are particularly damaging.
You know, I think in law enforcement, we deal with typically a single victim of crime. And with hate crimes, which makes it so far more complex, is that you not only have the victim or victims of crime, but you have a whole community of victims within that protected characteristic. And I think that's what makes it really important for law enforcement to do their best to prevent these things, and if they do occur, to bring the people to justice, because hate crimes are message crimes. You know, the individual victim may be a target, but really what they're trying to do is send a message to that victim's community that any place, any time, you too can be victimized. And it creates a tremendous amount of fear, apprehension. In the past, it has even created rioting within communities. And so it's in the best interest of everybody, especially law enforcement, to do their best in terms of combating this type of crime.
You just heard the term protected characteristic. Under the law, there are certain groups of people who are protected by the hate crime statute. And remember that when a hate crime occurs, it is always associated with an actual crime.
So it's a crime against person or property committed in whole or in part. And that's important. It does not have to be the only reason the crime was committed. an unlawful act against person or property committed in whole or in part because of the actual or perceived characteristic of the victim. And the characteristics that are protected by the California Penal Code are disability, gender, sexual orientation, race or color, nationality, and if the victim had an association with a person who had those protected characteristics, or an association with an institution that advocated for those particular characteristics.
The Penal Code uses the word bias 3 times when talking about hate crimes. So, contrary to what you might think, a hate crime does have to be a crime, but it does not have to be motivated by hate. It can be motivated by any form of bias.
Actually, California state laws regarding hate crimes are different than federal statutes.
It's going to be difficult for law enforcement officers to understand the hate crime laws. They're just not as clear as many other laws. It's easy to throw up your hands and say, oh, I don't know whether it's a hate crime or not, but I know it's a battery. It's also going to be easy to say, this has to be a hate crime because he used the N-word and this poor person was hurt. That's only the beginning of the investigation in either extreme, and it's not difficult. What people need to understand is you have to look at the act. First of all, was the act a criminal act? 2, was there a target, and who was targeted, and do they have a protected classification? 3, was the crime or was the act motivated by negative feelings towards the perception of that person's classification? So again, it's just a matter of 1, the act, 2, the target, 3, the motivation. And that may help officers determine whether it's a hate crime and an easy way to remember it. The other thing it's important for them to understand is that there's a difference between the misdemeanor hate crime and the felony hate crime. In terms of the misdemeanor hate crime, there has to be just an act that either vandalism or some threat or some battery, and that act has to be motivated, substantially motivated by some hate towards some person with a specific characteristic. For the felony, the vandalism merely needs to be over $400, and also there has to be the potential for actual injury or violent injury. But those kinds of things can be sorted out later by the district attorney who does the filing. The other important facet to understand is you can always add the enhancement of a hate crime onto any felony charge. So you may have a kidnapping, you may have a murder, you may have a child molest, you may have a sexual assault, but you can also add on that felony if it was motivated by a perception of someone and it's a hate crime, and that's a 422.75. So crimes need to be investigated both for, is this specifically a hate crime, is it a misdemeanor or a felony, or was there a bigger crime and should be adding on that felony. The other issue that's come to light is the multi-mission criminal extremists. These kinds of perpetrators of hate crimes are driven. They are driven and they believe in concepts like conspiracy. They believe in things that they are being motivated by a higher source, God, the Fuhrer, whatever their motivating force is. They believe that they are merely carrying out the word of a stronger force. They tend to discriminate against non-white, non-Christian, non-heterosexual individuals. But in addition to that, there's also the component which is anti-government, anti-reproductive rights, anti-homelessness. And so you will come across these people, and they are very sophisticated, some of them, in terms of communication skills, whether it's the internet or propaganda or coming to children's meetings in parks and high schools. There is an underground, and that underground is very powerful. These kinds of extremists, as the name implies, can be very dangerous to law enforcement because they really truly feel that they are just doing, for lack of a better term, God's work. And it's important to understand how their hate is insidious, and it goes to all those various types of groups.
Hate crimes represent the very antithesis of the documents of American freedom. They, in effect, stereotype entire groups of people in the most negative of all ways. And those who commit hate crimes basically communicate to an entire group through a victim, you don't belong here, you're not an American, and no one will ever care about you. It is absolutely antithetical to the whole premise behind the United States of America. It makes communities worried and mistrustful about other communities. It has a tendency to set community against community. It creates a sense of fear and apprehension, not only on the part of the actual victim and the victim's community, a family, but the victim's community as well, along with related communities that have also felt the horror of being victims of hate crimes.
Hate crime is motivated by bias or the perception of bias. It is a criminal act committed in whole or in part because the victim is perceived to have one or more of these characteristics: disability, gender, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or association with a person or group of people with one or more of these actual or perceived characteristics. It's basically a civil rights crime. And again, a hate crime is the only crime in which a prosecutor not only has to prove a crime occurred, but also prove the motive for the crime. A hate crime is a different kind of crime because a hate crime has a domino effect of terrorizing not only the targeted victim, but also of terrorizing the entire community that the victim belongs to. And your investigation is also going to be different because in order to prosecute a hate crime, you'll need to provide a suspect and a motive.
The best work we get done in these hate crime investigations is usually done at that front end by the beat officer, who's the first responder to the scene, who in real time can get that key piece of information that we need to help link, perhaps, the motive of this particular crime to a hate crime. So what we need to do is simply say, hey, every time I go into one of these cases, what do I need to be looking for? And just have a little checkoff list, even if it's just a mental checkoff where you say, this may be a robbery, but let me dig a little bit more to find out if there's anything more to this. And I think to the extent that we just become aware of the fact that we need to pay attention to the potential of a hate crime, then we can focus on that to check that off or check it on one way or the other, depending upon what we learn.
And surprisingly enough, there are times when you won't have to do much digging at all. In fact, you may have a suspect who will tell you exactly what happened and give you a motive for a hate crime before you even ask a single question.
The spontaneous statements are great because they'll tell you, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, and you haven't accused them of doing anything yet. No one has. And you don't even know if that's your suspect, so there's no need to Mirandize. You haven't asked any questions yet. So let them ramble. If they want to ramble, let them ramble. But document everything.
You'd be surprised what these guys will say. They're sometimes proud of what they represent. Get those spontaneous statements documented. Ask them, what organization are they associated with? Why did they do what they did? Are there others associated with the organization that are doing the same things that they're doing?
Those questions are critical because a lot of those organizations document what they're doing and the crimes they've committed in a way that everyone can see.
Graffiti is very important because once you learn to read it, it's very good evidence. The suspect may have committed a vandalism by putting the graffiti up after the crime or just before. So it's just very important if you can get any evidence you can during the crime, because you never know where it's going to lead you. And everything is evidence, a potential evidence. You can never collect too much. You never know where it's going to lead you.
Take photographs and preserve that evidence, because more often than not, graffiti is painted over, and so is the evidence. And don't forget that graffiti isn't always on a public place. You might be able to look at a suspect and know the motive for a hate crime, even know what organizations a suspect belongs to, because it's written all over him. Tattoos can be critical evidence because they help to substantiate motive.
They can tell you a lot. If they're gangs, they're going to tell you usually what set they're associated with. If it's an organization associated with skinheads or whatever it may be, there are various tattoos that describe that. You would definitely want to photograph that particular individual.
So always ask to photograph tattoos. They could be an important piece of evidence, and even seemingly innocent tattoos have a meaning.
And then you ask them, what does it mean? If you think you know, still ask. Let them tell you. The more people tell you, the more validity it adds to the meaning, because some people have different meanings for each tattoo. So every tattoo is important, even though it looks like obscured and may not be important to you at the time. It's important to the person that has it on their body. If you're going to take the time and spend the money or to put the tattoo on your body, it must mean something to you. Much like a guy that's been to the Marine Corps. When he puts USMC on him, that means something to him. Well, think about it. The guys that are out there in their own world, their war, as they call it, they want to put tattoos on them that's important to them. Warbirds, swastikas, numbers, those things are all important. So it's incumbent upon us as investigators to take photographs of those and ask the meaning, and then document the meanings, because ultimately it will help you in your investigation. It may lead to the motive of the crime.
You just heard that you may see tattoos of numbers as well as illustrations. Well, those numbers could mean something significant.
The number 88 is the 8th letter of the alphabet. It was an H, so you see 88 for Heil Hitler. You see 420, which is Hitler's birthday, April 20th. You see 2316, which is white power. The 14 words. They'll tattoo themselves with words as opposed to putting with numbers, as opposed to putting words all over their body. Not everyone knows what they mean, but if you are involved in the movement and the ideology, you will know what it means.
Beyond numbers, you should be aware that there are specific dates which are also significant.
Well, more and more officers are becoming more aware of dates and numbers. Hitler was one of those guys who didn't take a symbol and create a new symbol. He took old symbols and gave them new meanings. Look, much like dates. April 20th, Hitler's birthday. April 19th. Now April 16th with the anniversary of the Virginia Tech shooting. Those dates mean something to the white supremacy movement. And they would choose those dates to, celebrate or act out because of what occurred in the previous years on those days.
April 19th is the Waco anniversary, and the Columbine massacre took place on Hitler's birthday, April 20th. So just be aware, you may see a spike in hate crimes around those dates. If you listen to the radio or watch TV, you know that today's news and talk radio issues can motivate hate crimes. Take the subject of undocumented workers. It continues to be a polarizing topic that can move people to violence. That's what happened in San Diego. These men were living in a migrant camp in a canyon. A group of teenagers decided to clean it out. And even though the men they attacked were, for the most part, old enough to be their grandfathers, the boys used baseball bats to beat them. And because victims like these undocumented workers live here illegally, they're afraid of law enforcement and don't often report hate crimes. But there's another reason hate crimes often go unreported.
Research shows that one of the big reasons why people don't report hate crimes is they're afraid they'll be re-victimized or secondarily victimized. That can happen if they believe that an officer is going to be hostile to them or if they believe that the officer is going to be indifferent. The first responder officer can do a lot to overcome that. Many agencies also require a follow-up call from a detective or an officer later on.
So, the way you react to the victim and how your agency investigates and follows up on a hate crime is critical. Here's something important to remember. A lot of times, using a translator who is not in uniform will make a difference to a victim. But the reality is, your success is really going to hinge on what you know about the people and the families who live on the streets you patrol. If they know you, if they trust you, they will call you.
Law enforcement will never solve on its own the social situations that drive crime. Our whole community needs to own these things. And I believe that when we step up to the plate as community policing leaders, we help others in the community understand that it's not just the cops who need to do community policing, but the safety issues in our community are owned by everybody. The schools own it, the churches own it, the nonprofits own it, the social service organizations own it, our elected officials own it, and the police own it. And together we sit down and do community policing. But we have a leadership role to play in that regard. And so to suggest for a moment that, I'll come and I'll do my community policing time while I'm on duty and, check out, we haven't caught the spirit of it. I don't care what time of day it is, where you are, you're a police officer, you need to act the part, and you need to be responsible for who you are and do the right things.
Taking a leadership role in the community is tough to do if you literally don't understand what that community is saying. You know from experience that California is home to a whole lot of immigrant groups and cultures, and it's nearly impossible to communicate with someone who speaks a different language, hard to understand the subtleties of a different religion. Let's face it, unless you have some kind of common ground with a person or a group, it's tough to even have a conversation. As a cop, you're meeting people you don't understand in situations that are high stress for everyone. Make it easier on you and them. When you're not answering a call, sit down for a meal. It's one of the oldest and best ways to bridge a cultural gap.
I don't care what department you're in, we're busy. California law enforcement in particular, we are understaffed in just about every agency in this state. But there are times, we all know that there are times it's either a coffee break or you're going to lunch or you're going to a dinner. Well, have some variety in where you're going to dinner. Say, hey, once a week or something, I'm going to go to a restaurant for a cultural group I'm not familiar with and just meet a few people. What I constantly hear from members of the community is that it doesn't take much for them to warm up to officers. The mere fact that somebody would go into a restaurant and sit down and have something to eat that they're not familiar with means a huge amount to members of this community. And all of a sudden they feel like the department is also theirs and they also own those officers, if you will. It's amazing to me what just sitting down and breaking a little bit of bread with people can do in terms of community trust.
And while trying out a new ethnic restaurant can pay off in a good meal, goodwill, and in potential trust, cultural diversity training takes that little bit of new understanding to another level. It's all about not only knowing the people you police, but understanding them, their culture, their beliefs, and their mindset.
Every police officer, I think, needs to have an awareness of the cultures that are represented by the residents who live in that community. They have to understand their beat. So if there are gurudwaras in their beat, they have to know what that is. They have to know what the Sikh religion is. If they have Hindu temples, if they have synagogues, if they have mosques, it's really important for them to venture out there, to go into these houses of worship, to get to know the leaders, and to understand a little bit about the culture. That's going to go a long way in building rapport, building trust, which is ultimately going to help them in their intelligence gathering, in the work of law enforcement. Because 70 to 80% of law enforcement work, we know, is non-crisis. They're stopping somebody for a ticket. They're receiving crime reports. They're following up on investigations. They're providing security for events and so forth. And so those types of situations require interpersonal relationships. They require rapport. They require trust. And so it is for those instances that a police officer needs to have cultural competency training.
Cultural competency training is something any department of any size can do. It's basically an investment of time and can be done easily for little or no money.
It's cost-free. Some organizations may charge for certain trainings, but overall, I mean, this is a service grounded within an entire community, and there is never, to educate yourself, you should have access, just as a victim should have access to services to change their situation.
I would check around my communities, neighboring jurisdictions, see what they're doing, put an officer into one of their classes, invite, a group to come in and provide the training in-house. There's online training available now. There's video training available. There's all kinds of ways that you can get the information and present it. Nothing quite measures up to having 4 Sikh men and women sitting on a panel talking about their history and their backgrounds and then interacting with the students. I mean, that's kind of like, in my view, the best training you can get.
It can only happen through personal interactions. It can't happen by reading a book, and it can't happen by getting a a trainer who isn't part of that community to do training. You've got to actually interact with each other, and we really stress the importance of that face-to-face interaction, because you're not just affecting the mind now, you're affecting the heart. And ultimately, that's what you need to do. That's how you build a trust in the report and the rapport.
That trust and rapport always and only comes with understanding of cultural issues.
And so there's some things that if you just know the basics, it will really help out the police, and also it will strengthen the relationship. For example, I'll give you a good example. If a police officer goes into a mosque and he takes off his shoes and walks into the mosque, I guarantee you he won everybody's heart. Every single one of those people will say, you know what, they'll go and give him a hug. But if a police officer walks in with his shoes to a mosque, because that's a place Muslims pray, it's just, in other words, I have no regard for you. How is he going to get the cooperation from them? Even if they saw something, they say, I wouldn't see it. Because now we just cut the ties. Just a simple, basic thing.
You do need to be aware of these cultural issues. For instance, you could be going into an Islamic mosque and not know to take your shoes off, and you could offend somebody by going in there. Well, how do you know what those issues are? Well, because you meet the people, you talk to them about these things. You go visit a mosque, have them explain to you in a non-stressful situation what you should do when you go into a mosque. And it's no different than if you go into a synagogue, or if you go into a Catholic church, or if you go into some other type of an area where there's different cultural things going on. Get there ahead of time. Get to know the people. If you're working a beat, go introduce yourself to the local imam. If you're working a beat in an area where there's a lot of Jewish people living, go meet the rabbi at the synagogue. So I think you just have to reach out and be a human being, and when they begin to perceive you and see you as that cop in the neighborhood who is also a human being, I'm telling you, when the crimes do occur, it just goes so much more smoothly for both parties involved, both law enforcement and the community.
The Northern California city of Fremont is extraordinarily diverse. Fremont is a lot like New York City was at the turn of the century. It has a huge first-generation immigrant population. You can literally see the language and cultural differences here. Walk down Main Street and you may forget you're even in California. Fremont is home to Middle Easterners, Pakistanis, Sikhs, Muslims, Buddhists, and Christians. And it has the largest Afghan population in the United States.
In the past 20 years, the transition has been so amazing that you have bread here like they have bread in Afghanistan. You have food here like they have food in Afghanistan. They have built the little, like the little Chinatown that the Chinese built. They built the little Kabul, where people feel at home. They can go to the restaurants and feel like they're back home.
You probably don't know this, but for the most part, the Afghans who migrated to Fremont aren't here by choice. They were forced to leave. These people are war veterans, and the vast majority of the Afghans in Fremont are law-abiding, peaceful people. So when one of their own was gunned down in broad daylight, it shocked and terrified the community.
A man was driving his vehicle down a suburban street in Fremont. He saw a Muslim woman in hijab walking down the sidewalk with her daughter, 3-year-old daughter. He stops his vehicle near her, gets out of the car with his gun, and goes over to her and shoots her point blank. The woman drops to the ground and she's bleeding, her daughter is screaming. He calmly walks back to his car and drives away.
And because this crime was so random, so violent, so incomprehensible, everyone in the Afghan community was convinced it was a hate crime.
Now, many people in this community believe that Ansari's death was a hate crime because she wore a hijab or a head covering. The DA says at this point there is no indication of a hate crime. Also, he says there's no indication of a motive.
There was a lot of panic, and also the story became a national story. So it didn't just affect the Fremont Muslim community, it affected the San Francisco Bay Area Muslim community and then the Muslim community in America. And there are about 3 to 8 million Muslims in America that it had an impact on. And so that's why it was really important for the chief of police to handle this very, very carefully. Without compromising the case, without compromising the investigations, he also needed to assuage the fears of Muslims, not only in his community, but around the country, maintain good relations, and maintain his respectability, that he was doing something about the case, he was investigating the case, but these things take time.
Fremont Police Chief Craig Steckler used that time to help calm the terrified people of his city. The suspect was in custody. The investigation was continuing. And police still didn't have a motive because the suspect wasn't talking. But Steckler did. He talked to the Afghan and Muslim community through his social and religious contacts. He made those contacts years before through outreach and cultural diversity training.
It gave us the ability to answer their questions and kind of negate their concerns. We didn't. We tried to give them as much information as we possibly could and not jeopardize our investigative efforts.
Remember, this was a high-profile crime getting national attention.
And one of the great things about the Fremont Police Department, not just the police department, but the Fremont mayor was there like a family member. I mean, you don't see a mayor going to, they would probably go to a funeral, but they don't go in the house and eat food with them and sit and throughout the few days, every day. That he was there. The mayor of Fremont was very generous. Fremont Police Department, all the police officers constantly reporting, letting us know what's happening, that we are on the case, and this is just giving this tranquility to our hearts.
Chief Steckler did something else to help ease the grief of the Afghan community in Fremont. Even though there was a homicide to investigate, he was respectful of the Muslim religion and its traditions regarding death and burial.
In the Muslim faith, they want to bathe the body, and there's a short burial time. And so, we worked with the mortuary and the coroner's office. Some women went in and bathed the body, dressed the body. We allowed the memorial home to bring the body into the park in Hearst. I was sensitive to need to do that. The husband made the request, so we just said, do it, and we'll deal with the fallout later. There was no fallout.
That's amazing. That is amazing. So he knows the practices of Muslims, which is very similar to Jewish practices for burial. The burial has to be quick. The body has to be bathed. And the body is also brought to the congregation for the prayers. And so for the chief of police of a major city like Fremont to allow all of that to take place, that's just amazing. That wins the hearts and the minds of the community. And, and it was very important for him to maintain those relationships without, again, compromising investigations of the case, and not to declare it a hate crime if it isn't a hate crime. And so he walked a very tight, what's the word? He walked a very tight line, and I think that he handled it, quite well. And what was interesting to me is that he didn't send his lieutenants, he didn't send his commanders, he was there himself. Which I think is very cool. In similar situations, I've seen chiefs of police send other people to these events, but he was present in all of them, and I really appreciated that.
That was the difference between this, what happened with Ali Ansari's case, that the police department and the mayor, they knew how to speak to this community because they had meetings before, they had a relationship, they know how the people were, they knew our culture, they know our restaurant, they ate at our restaurants, they know our food, they know the way we dress, they know that they have to take off their shoes when they go to the mosque. So all these things really, they won the heart of the community. So that's why the community was like, what can we do? What can we do? How could we help you? What do you need?
In Fremont, police and Afghan leaders knew each other. The community outreach that was done long before Aliyah Ansari's death helped to create an atmosphere of trust for police during that terrifying time. What's more, police respected the Afghan culture and allowed the body to be washed and buried according to the Muslim tradition. Now remember, hate crimes are message crimes, And at the time, this murder was thought to be a hate crime. It turns out it wasn't. Even so, the Afghan community had faith and trust in the Fremont Police Department and ultimately felt that justice had been done for Alia Ansari. But about the same time, in West Hollywood, the brutal attack of gay actor Trev Brody left members of that community outraged and angry at law enforcement. Why? Because law enforcement created a false expectation in the community in the beginning of the Brody investigation by saying that it was likely a hate crime. Big mistake. Turned out that, just like the Alia Ansari case, it wasn't a hate crime at all.
And it's important that for department personnel, first responders, to not allow the media to dictate where the investigation is going to go. That particular case it was announced that it was a hate crime very early in the investigation. After the investigation concluded, it was determined that the victim was not victimized because of his sexual orientation. He was a robbery victim. But because it had already been put out that it was being investigated as a hate crime, the community was already expecting the case to come back with a guilty verdict with hate crime allegations. But it did not, because it wasn't warranted. It's very important not to put that out. It's important to put out that it's going to be investigated as a robbery, which is what it was. But we don't know what the motivation is until we start investigating. And at that time, no suspects were apprehended. So there's no way of knowing what the motivations were. Once the suspects were apprehended, it was determined that it was strictly a robbery. But the community was up in arms once the verdict came back and no hate crime allegations were filed. It's important that we not allow that to occur. We don't know. We definitely don't know, especially when the suspects are outstanding.
The one thing that we want to do is make sure that our facts are documented accurately, that we let the media know to advise the community that this is an ongoing investigation. We don't want to make a rash decision before investigating the case, because we could give false information to elevate the investigation to a hate crime when in fact it may not be. So the most important thing to do is to let the community know that this is an ongoing investigation, and if they have questions, we give them a contact number to call to follow up on, and that way we can give them additional information when needed. But just to arbitrarily say that this is a particular crime or this is a hate crime without actually knowing the facts is inappropriate.
Now, remember again that, like the Trev Brody attack, Alia Ansari's murder in Fremont was initially thought to be a hate crime. But in Fremont, law enforcement was complimented for its handling of the case. In West Hollywood, there were protests, anger, and rage directed at law enforcement. And the difference in the way the community reacted has everything to do with the way law enforcement and the media handled the case from the very beginning. There are going to be times that even though you suspect or may even know that a hate crime was committed, your victim doesn't want you to know it. Remember, hate crimes are different. They're embarrassing, humiliating, and hurtful. They're message crimes that affect entire communities. But you're a cop, and you want to get the bad guys, right? So you have to take the time to ask the right questions and to be very, very sensitive to a victim who's reluctant. Keep in mind that if the victim has a disability, especially a communication or processing difficulty, what appears to be reluctance may actually be fear. So take extra time to develop trust with them.
With any crime victim, and probably especially with any hate crime victim, the officer needs to be very sensitive. Hate crimes are very traumatic, much more traumatic than other crimes on the average, and the officer needs to be the hope and the support of the victim.
I just asked the question, why do you think you were attacked? You know, why did they pick you out? You know, what were you doing? And see how they respond to that. You know, some people may be very open and tell you what they think and why they think it happened, and other people would be more hesitant. And so, you know, our training provides us with good interview and interrogation techniques and skills, and I think we do our best to, one, establish a relationship, as even quickly. I mean, in our occupation, we're able to establish those relationships quickly so that there's trust. They feel that they can talk to you, communicate with you, and hopefully, you can get all the information that you need for your report.
I'm Officer Rogers, River City Police Department. What's going on?
We're just packing up to go, officer.
Okay, well, hold on. Are you guys here together?
Yes.
What happened to your face?
We were just sitting here having our picnic lunch, and a guy came up and...
Okay. How long ago did this occur?
10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, 10, 15 minutes ago? Okay. I'm going to get, it looks pretty bad. I'm going to get paramedics
it's okay,
in out.
okay, we're just planning to go.
Calm down. What's your name?
It's okay.
I'm Jerry.
Jerry? Okay, and you are?
Nancy.
Nancy. I'm Officer Rogers. I'm here to help. All right? Someone assaulted you, obviously, and we need to get that looked at, okay? It may be more serious than you think.
Did you call? No.
What happened, real quick? Can you give me what happened here?
We're sitting here. We just finished our lunch. We were just sitting with looking at the view, and this guy came from that direction, kind of out of nowhere, and...
Do you know this person?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Never seen him before. I don't even... I don't...
We come here a lot.
You do?
This is our park where we walk our dog. I'd never seen him before.
Okay. Would you be able to give me a quick description? And actually, real quick, how did that happen? Did he have a weapon?
No, he just hit me. I don't know why. We told him that we were just going to go.
So it was a punch?
We were packing up to go, and Jerry was kind of leaning over to pick up the blanket, and he just...
And she told him we were leaving.
Okay, and I'm going to get into detail with each one of you, okay? But right now, what's real important is that I get a description so I can put that out to other units so they can start maybe looking for this person.
Okay, I think, it wasn't very long ago. He might still be around the park.
Okay, did you say a white male?
Yes.
About how old?
25 to 30-ish.
And can you give me any features? Blonde hair, dark hair?
Blonde hair, close cropped. I don't know about your height, I would say. No taller.
He was...
Is he heavy set, thin?
Athletic.
Athletic build?
Yeah.
Okay.
Average kind of...
Any facial hair?
No, I don't think so. He was pretty close.
Any, how about clothing?
Jeans,
white t-shirt.
And a t-shirt, yeah.
Blue jeans?
Blue jeans, yep.
And did you say white t-shirt? Or
White,
what
like
color?
dirty gray, kind of white. It wasn't like...
Any logos or anything on it?
You know what, honey? He had one of those chain belt, one of those wallet, one of those wallet chain things. I remember.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had. I think he had a ring that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it just happens.
Was there something about the ring that stood out?
It was quite raised. I don't know if it had a cross or a skull or.
You know what? It was. I think you're right. It was a silver ring, like the one that Bo was looking at in the catalog. I think you're right. Yeah, it had
some kind of raised
that might be
skull
what he
or
hit you
something.
with. Okay.
I think so.
It's just, I don't know if he didn't. He just hit me really hard. And
okay. Did he? And which direction did he leave in?
He swung
went that way?
and went that way.
Okay. Did you see if he was with anyone else?
No, he appeared to be alone.
I didn't see anyone else.
Because 6-3 Edward, clear for BOL on assault suspect.
Station 8, 6-3 Edward, go ahead.
It's okay. It feels
It's gonna be a white male, 25 to 30.
No, I think it looks like it's kind of stopping.
Blonde, short hair, about 6 foot with an athletic build.
You know what, honey? I'm sure when they wash
clean
it,
shaven.
it's just a little bit of a
Wearing a dirty white or grayish T-shirt. Had a wallet with a chain attached, and was possibly wearing a ring, some type of ring on his hand. I'm also going to need medics for a facial injury, and I'll need another unit for any possible witnesses. Incident occurred about 10 to 15 ago, NFI.
I hate that it ruined it for you.
Okay. Paramedics are en route to come take a look, okay? I'd like to speak to each of you individually, okay? Because sometimes each one of you sees things a little bit differently and may have some details that the other doesn't, okay? So how about I speak with Jerry first, okay? Is that all right?
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just going to have you step over here. So if you just want to wait here for me, sit down, relax, take a deep
Is there
breath.
anything I can do? Should I call somebody or?
You know, why don't you just leave everything the way it is? And I, just in case he drops something, I would like to look. So
Okay, honey,
maybe
you know what?
maybe
It's okay. Just sit down.
try not to touch everything. Just have a seat and relax, okay? And I'll try and be as quickly as possible.
Relax.
It's okay. Yeah.
I know it's easy for me to say and it's
Yeah.
hard to do. Okay, Jerry,
I'm sorry, what was your name?
you can call me Marco.
Okay.
Okay, you guys are here enjoying the park,
Yeah.
all right? And can you tell me what's the next thing you noticed?
There was a commotion behind us, you know, and there's a play area over there. So
What kind of commotion?
Well, there was just shouting. You know,
Okay.
we heard shouting. Maybe,
What was this person shouting?
you know, I don't think it matters what he was shouting. She just heard some shouting, and she looked over there to see, you know. And I said we should just go.
Okay,
You know.
well, hold on a sec. We have a person shouting and then we have a person assaulted. So a lot of times those things go hand in hand, okay?
Yeah.
It may be relevant in this type of case. So, you know, if there were vulgarities a person was saying, don't worry, it's not going to offend me, okay? We hear it all the time. So if you can be as detailed as possible, that would be best.
Okay, so we're just sitting on the blanket. We're enjoying the day in the park. We just finished our lunch, and he's over there by the play area, and he just shouts out, "Dyke bitches."
And how far away was he? Was he like right up on you guys when this was happening, or was he over by the playground?
Well, he came up onto the grass area, and I...
Did he continue saying things?
Well, you know, based on what he shouted initially, he just continued on, you know, offering his services as a man.
Okay, and what do you mean by that? I mean, I have an idea of what you mean, but...
Well, he seemed to believe that we were together, clearly, in other than just friends and roommates, and so he thought that perhaps he could resolve our issues with men by...
Okay, so he felt you guys were a couple, so he's offering himself to...
And I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know why he would think that, and I don't know certainly why...
Which it doesn't matter, okay? No one has a right to approach somebody regardless of their background and assault them in this manner, okay? Whatever lifestyle. So what that person did was wrong, all right? And that person is the one that there should be consequences, okay? So you believe he felt you guys were a couple?
Yeah.
Okay. And what else? Did he say anything else, or?
He didn't have any right to invade our privacy, and so she just told him to leave us alone. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he hit me. I didn't say anything to him. I'm not good at confrontation, so I just was packing up the picnic, and.
And do you know if he ran away immediately after he hit you, or he just stood here and laughed?
He laughed as he was running away. That's it. That's all.
Okay. I'm going to talk to Nancy now. Okay.
Okay.
As difficult as it may be, I'd like to just have a seat and relax. Okay. Medic should be here. Okay. Thank you, Jerry. Come on over, have a seat, and then Nancy, can I talk to you?
It's okay. He's really very nice.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. I appreciate your patience. You guys have been through a lot this morning.
Not the day I planned.
No, not at all. I don't think most people don't. I've talked to Jerry, and she's given me some information. I'd like to talk to you and get your side of what happened. Let me know what happened.
Well, we were just finishing our lunch. We had our back to that direction, kind of looking out at the pond, and I was aware of a guy yelling, obscenities and...
Can you tell me what he was yelling?
He said something like, fucking dyke bitches.
Did he say anything else in addition to that?
Yeah, more sort of sexual slurs.
What kind?
Muffin muncher. I mean, really, just stupid things. And we just continued to kind of want to ignore him.
Did he make any verbal threats? Did he say anything else?
When I spoke to him, then just before he hit Jerry, he made some kind of comment about goddamn, man. I mean, about what he could be man enough for both of us, or some.
Would you recognize this man if you saw him again?
I think I would.
And you've never seen him before?
No.
Okay. Is there anything else you can think of in addition to what you've told me that you feel is relevant, as small as it may be?
No, I think we were just minding our own business, sitting, enjoying the park.
And I'm sorry this happened to you here, and I'll address both of you. But let's make sure Jerry's medical needs get taken care of. Okay. If we can step back here, and then I'll discuss some stuff with both you and Jerry. Okay.
What do you think the chances are of catching him?
Hopefully good. That's why we need to get as much information as possible. So we have officers right now searching the area.
Would we have to testify?
That's always a possibility, but it's not always 100% that you would. Okay, so we're kind of jumping ahead at this point, so let's worry about that stuff later on. Okay, what I would like to express to both of you is
it's really bleeding.
No one deserves this. It shouldn't happen to anybody. Okay, so don't feel like you guys are at fault for anything. This person should not have done this. We're going to do what we can on this case, and the case is going to be forwarded to investigations. So you will be contacted. There's also some resources available to you, counseling if you guys find you're still having a hard time with this, which is it's normal. It's a very emotional, very violent incident. So check with many programs. Alternate lifestyle organizations have a lot of resources, as does the hospital, and the district attorney also has some resources available for victims.
You've been very kind. Do you have a card?
I do.
Do we contact you, or
you can contact me. I'm going to take this initial investigation, and I'll hand it over, and I'll inform detectives. Okay. There's my card there.
Okay.
Okay. And actually, let me give you a case number. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We're not an alternate lifestyle. I mean, we're just minding our own business, trying to live our life, and.
And I understand, and I'm sorry if I use that term, but you're right. You are just living your life, and no one has a right to because of that.
We don't have an alternative. I mean, this is our.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with this. He doesn't have a right to go hitting anybody in the park.
Okay, and this is my name, and my number, and the case number. Okay. All right.
Well, you were very kind, officer.
You're welcome. I'm very sorry you guys had to go through this.
Thank you.
And we're going to do the best we can to help you.
Thank you.
When a law enforcement officer comes to a call like that, they have to be ready to listen. They have to be focused on the incident that they're involved in. They can't be distracted by other cases, by other things that are going on in their life. They have to be focused on that individual. Because if that individual feels as if they are a burden, or feels as if the law enforcement officer has some opinion of them which is negative, or the law enforcement officer doesn't respect them or doesn't treat them the same as they might treat another crime victim, that victim will likely shut down. They will not feel listened to, therefore they will not speak. But if a law enforcement officer approaches them and really listens and shows that they sincerely care, then they are more likely to get the kinds of information that someone may be reticent to give them under normal circumstances. It's a matter of taking time, not rushing through an interview, responding to their concerns, their anxieties. Sometimes I've seen law enforcement officers start off with, "What questions do you have for me?" And that lets them know right away that they're actually interested in making sure that this is a process, a communication process going back and forth.
It is a process. And remember that communication between you and the victim is critical. Hate crimes can't be prosecuted successfully unless both a crime and a motive for that crime is proved. The victim may be reluctant to tell you exactly what happened, but make sure that you write down all information, including anything the suspect said, no matter how ugly or disturbing, verbatim. If there are witnesses, make sure that you talk to them too. And a picture is always worth 1,000 words. Take photographs of evidence, including any wounds on the victim. And don't forget to offer the victim help and connect them to community resources. Again, hate crimes are different than any other crime. because when you're the target of a hate crime, it's a completely random act. You don't know the perpetrator, and you've been targeted or you've been victimized for no other reason than you belong to a certain religious or cultural or ethnic group. And look, you know exactly how that feels, because when a fellow law enforcement officer is targeted, it affects everyone who wears the badge.
We all feel threatened, hurt, upset when a fellow member of law enforcement is injured and we hear about it. And it's the same thing for people in a close religious group, people who have a certain sexual orientation, come from a certain country, share a same color or race. You feel not only that that individual was hurt, but gee, just because I have those characteristics, or just because I wear the badge, I may be targeted. So some people refer to it as a message crime, and it really is. It sends hurt not just to the individual, but ripples of hurt through the community from which that individual comes.
Some officers might wonder why they should take all the time and effort that it takes to do a formal report on hate crime when there is no suspect in custody. There may never be a suspect in custody. The big reason is that the officer may be the only representative of society who ever speaks to that victim. That by taking a full report, taking as much time as you need to talk to the victim and to the witnesses, you send a message to that victim that we, society, take this crime seriously. You send that message to the victim, you send that message to the victim's community. You gain greater cooperation from the victim and the community in the long run. You help the victim to heal, because it's a very traumatic thing to be a victim of a crime, and even more traumatic to be a victim of a hate crime. And you help avoid retaliation, people taking the law into their own hands.
Hate crimes are ugly. They're message crimes that hurt not only the victim, but that victim's family and community. And sometimes the words that are used can do more damage than physical wounds. Cuts and bruises heal quickly. Emotional trauma can take a lot longer. So it's important, it's critical that you document every single word that is used in a hate crime, because they're a critical element of the crime. Those words can show bias, and attorneys need to show bias to show motive when prosecuting hate crimes.
As a detective, you get a lot of reports where it appears as though the officers are hesitant to put down exactly what verbiage was used in the report. It has to be specific. It has to be verbatim. In other words, he said a racist remark. He said inappropriate remarks. He said nasty things. Does not suffice. If derogatory terms were used, it has to say that specifically, because that is the element of the crime. So it's necessary that it be there, documented in the report.
An officer may be offended and embarrassed by the language that the perpetrator used. That's why the perpetrator used it, and that's why it's important to report it, so that the jury will know how offensive and embarrassing it is.
Again, it's critical that you document everything. That means writing down every single word a suspect says exactly as he or she says it.
If you just write that there was a racial slur, it will not help me in my prosecution. I need to hear the foul words. Because when I go into a courtroom, I'm going to say to the jury, excuse me, but these were the words spoken by the defendant. And it doesn't mean I agree with them, but I'm going to use the actual language. And that's the only way a jury can actually determine exactly what the motivation was. So we don't just say in court it was a racial slur. We actually say the foul word.
Interviewing that victim and getting a quality, detailed statement, ensuring that whatever verbiage was used is detailed and specific, and documented as to what exactly was said. I'm not trying to offend anyone here, but if the word nigger, redneck, spick, chink, beaner, whatever it was used, that has to be documented in the report. Not inappropriate language or offensive language or inappropriate remarks. Ensure that the scene is photographed, evidence is gathered, and that you canvass the location for witnesses. Also taking into consideration that our society is now made up of cameras everywhere. There are many cases that are solved because of still cameras, whether they be at some donut shop or some jewelry store. Ensure that you canvass the location for video. You'd be surprised what you might come up with. I've had numerous cases where the crimes were on videotape, whether it be at an ATM or just out on the street. That's what's most important, the preliminary investigation. Because once the detectives get the case, they'll do the follow-up and gather whatever additional information that they can prior to presentation to the DA or CA for filing consideration.
Making that case is in large part up to you. So it's critical for you, the first responder, to do your job and make sure that your report includes everything prosecutors need.
Because remember, what we're looking for in a hate crime is the emotional motivation, the inner anger, the hatred that somebody has for this individual. We're trying to prove hate. And the best way to do that is to write specifically the words that were used by the suspect in these cases. We should not hesitate. You may feel like you're going to embarrass the victims by writing some of the things in there. And in fact, they may be somewhat embarrassed to even share these things with you. That's where you have that face-to-face, heart-to-heart conversation with the victim to say, I'm not asking this question to embarrass you, but I need to know exactly and specifically what was said.
Okay, so you got everything for the report?
Yeah, I think I've got everything.
Okay, did you get her address?
Yeah, I got her address.
Okay, everything's current. I mean, she lives in an apartment. You make sure you get the apartment number?
I've got to double check.
Okay, make sure you did. If you don't, call her back and get the apartment number. Did you take photos of the injuries?
Yeah, we got photos of the injuries.
Okay.
I was a little uncomfortable, though, because there was a lot of racial slurs and a lot of that kind of stuff.
Okay, if they said it verbatim, if they used the N-word and you put it in quotes and you use it that way, okay, if they said it, because it's going to come out in court anyway, you have to write exactly what they said. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, that's what they said. That's what you have to write. Okay?
All right. Okay.
Talking to prosecutors throughout the state who handle hate crimes, we talk about the difficulty in convincing a jury what the motivation was for the crime. And the more evidence that law enforcement preserves and captures, the better our cases will be. And that includes collecting hate material, photographing any sort of graffiti, any sort of visual, such as a tattoo, which will help the prosecutor prove the bias of the individual when they committed the unlawful act. It's crucial.
Hate crimes are traumatizing, potentially even more traumatizing than a rape or sexual crime. It's something to keep in mind when you question victims.
All people need to be treated with dignity and respect. And I think the men and women of law enforcement take a lot of pride in terms of doing that. I think a victim of a hate crime, and because of this training, we're more aware and we're more sensitive to the issues, need to be sympathetic, need to have empathy for this victim, and to help them get through this. And by treating them properly and respectfully, I think we better, prevent further victimization of this person.
One way to do that is to let the victim know about what kind of assistance is available. And there are lots of local, regional, and state organizations standing by, ready and willing to help. The California Victim Compensation and Government Claims Board is an organization created especially for victims of crime. And it's important for officers to recognize that a hate crime affects more than one victim.
Their whole family is also victimized. And family members as well can qualify for assistance from our program if they might need something like counseling. We can help with that as well. So for the officer to recognize that when you have a victim, it's usually not just one person. It's that whole family, that whole person's support unit. And then the other thing is to make sure they inform the victim about the victim assistance program in their county and about the victim compensation program at the state level, to provide the card to the victim. And it's also important to realize that usually when you're on the scene of a crime and the victim has just experienced the crime, they're in a state of shock, they're traumatized. They are most likely not going to remember 80% of what you've said to them. So there needs to be a follow-up. And when that follow-up occurs, to repeat the information about the victim resources that are available. And this is for all the detectives. They need to keep reinforcing that so victims know there are a variety of resources available for them.
Some of those resources include money, medical assistance, counseling, relocation help, and burial expenses. As long as the need is related to the crime, the victim may qualify for assistance. And it's up to you as the first responder to make sure the victim has access to these programs.
Law enforcement officers, when they go to the scene of a crime, we provide them with law enforcement cards to provide to the victim, which give them information about our program and our 800 number for them to call. And every county also has a victim witness advocate to which local law enforcement can refer the victims for assistance.
But not all officers know about these victim programs, and not all officers carry the cards.
We know that some law enforcement officers know about it. We know that victims are informed about our program inconsistently. The statistics tell us currently that only about 10% of crime victims throughout the state of California are applying for assistance through our program. And we're actively working to change those statistics. And we really believe it's all about outreach right now, making sure people know that we're here to help and please come. Even if they're not sure if they qualify, people should just come forward and, file an application and we'll take a look at it.
We think it's terribly important that when there is a victim of a crime, in our case, it's the hate crime because that's within the jurisdiction of our agency dealing with discrimination and hate, that individual receive the support knowing that there is government cares. It's not just their own community, but government cares. Our society cares that you've been victimized because of hatred, because of bias, because of prejudice. So we actually have a program called the Hate Crime Victim Assistance and Advocacy Initiative in which we contract with community-based organizations, train them to understand the victim witness services available and resources and assistance, and reach out to those victims, make sure that their needs are being met, make sure they know that the community is supporting them. They aren't alone in this. And I have to say, it's surprising how often it is that in a vast metropolis like LA County that victims of hate crime may feel that. They may feel, unless it's a high-profile crime, and we have enough crimes that not all of them are high-profile, that they are forgotten. That their case is, they don't know what's happening with it. They were victimized and they haven't heard anything about any arrests or any prosecution. They haven't heard anyone from the community and they feel, really frustrated at their situation. We're able to let them know that that government cares, that our society cares, and that we support communities who may have a greater track record of experience in dealing with the community, with the cultural nuances, with the sensitivities, and be able to support that victim.
That also has to be part of your quote-unquote checkoff list when you're investigating a crime. We all know that the best agencies are those who really truly respect their victims and go out of their way to treat the victims the way that we would want those victims treated if they were members of our own family who had just been victimized. So I think maybe that's just the way you need to look at it. When you go in to investigate a crime, you treat that victim as if it was your mother, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, your grandfather, grandmother, whatever, and you'll do exactly what you need to do to get them the type of assistance that they need to be able to overcome the trauma of having been victimized.
If you don't know what's available in your community, call the California Victim Compensation and Government Claims Board. And remember, you can always call your own district attorney's victim witness program. Chances are you'll find that your community or a neighboring community has something in place. And something else to keep in mind. Victims have legal options other than the criminal justice system.
I think it's very important for law enforcement to be aware of them. In California, the civil codes have some statutes, such as the Ralph Civil Rights Act and the Baines Civil Rights Act, which allow city attorneys, the attorney general, or district attorneys to actually bring civil suits for damages. Also, in the Civil Code, victims can get temporary restraining orders. And this is very important for neighborhood disputes. Neighborhood disputes that involve bias and fall short of a hate crime. So if you have repeated hate incidents within a neighborhood, it's very important that the victim know they can get a restraining order so that the behavior can be stopped. And finally, many communities have alternate dispute resolution panels, and they have these are usually run through human relations commissions, and sometimes that's a good place to send people in the neighborhood situation where there's ongoing hate incidences which fall short of hate crimes. And finally, of course, there's the state compensation program for victims of any crime, and if they have suffered a financial loss because being the victim of a hate crime, they would, of course, enjoy the benefits of the state compensation programs.
Being a victim of a hate crime can be debilitating because of worry, especially if it occurs at your home. As a number of incidents and my family experienced, it was at our house. You don't any longer feel safe at your home. You worry about your wife, you worry about your children, you worry about your house, you worry about your staff, and they know where you live. And every once in a while, they remind you of that.
You're going to hear this again and again. Hate crimes are different. They're perpetrated not just against an individual. Hate crimes are directed against an entire group or classification of people.
In 2001, about 500 hate crimes were reported to the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is an organization that's based in D.C. that monitors this. 5 years later, 2,500 hate crimes have been reported. That's a 500% increase. And we know that there's a ratio between reported hate crimes and unreported, and it's between 1 to 3 to 1 to 5, and some people say it's up to 1 to 10.
We see fairly consistently the groups that are targeted most frequently. And in LA County, African Americans are by far the largest targeted group. Many times it's percent in the population. We also see that the second largest targeted group tends to be gays and lesbians. We also see that in terms of religious hate crime, anti-Jewish crimes are the most common by far. And we are also seeing a rise in gang-involved hate crime. Fully 1 of every 4 racial hate crimes reported in LA County involved gangs as suspects.
That's a huge percentage, and you're probably seeing gang-related hate crimes in your area as well.
They call it purging their area. You have Hispanic gangs purging their areas of blacks. You have blacks purging their areas of Hispanics, and those crimes are being conducted by gang members. Gang members are opportunists. They don't care what kind of crime they commit. They just want to commit crime.
Don't assume that just because it's a gang crime, it's not a hate crime too. Photograph gang tagging or graffiti that contains hate language. Those pictures could be critical evidence in a court case. And also keep in mind that hate incidents often precede hate crimes. So document, document, document. It could help prosecutors later on.
It's hard to prove a hate crime in court, and that's why it's so important for the law enforcement officers to document it.
Documenting means doing your homework. And surprisingly, the internet may be a source of information or even evidence. Gangs have become pretty sophisticated. Some have their own websites or Facebook and MySpace accounts. Those sites may include some boasting about hate crimes that members have committed. And of course, you can always get background information on those crimes from media sites, newspaper, radio, and TV. But your best resource, by far, will be members of the community. Keep in mind that hate crimes feed fear, so witnesses and victims are probably going to be very reluctant to talk to you. That means you're going to have to make it safe for them to come forward.
As police officers, we know that trust is the most important thing we engender with the community. If they trust us when we go to handle a crime, they'll work with us, they'll be our witnesses, they'll volunteer information that perhaps we wouldn't get otherwise. The smartest thing that a police officer can do is to engage in the community policing philosophy and in the concepts, go out and get to know the community. Do your outreach before the crime occurs. Get to know the leaders in the neighborhoods. Get to know the informal leaders, if you will. And then when the crime does occur, the fact that you've got connections with these individuals and they trust you makes all the difference in the world.
Police department cannot do it without us. Yeah, sure, they carry the guns, but we have the power over here. And we're the ones that talk to our neighbors, and we're the ones that know what's going on because we're here 24/7. And we can work with them, and they need to work with us.
Marianne Cyphers has lived in the Harbor Gateway area of Los Angeles for more than 40 years. She still lives in the house where she raised her children. And over the years Marianne has lived here, she's seen a neighborhood in transition and a neighborhood under siege.
There are 40,000 gang members in the city of Los Angeles. They outnumber police 4-1. They rule entire communities, killing each other and killing the innocent far more frequently than you might realize.
I was on the floor many nights, I have to tell you this, with gunfire outside the window, and it's not a pleasant thing. And I'm not going to live in fear. That's not the way I was brought up. That's not the way I am. And I don't want my children or my grandchildren or great-grandchildren or anybody's children or anybody living in fear. We're not on this earth to live in fear.
14-year-old Cheryl Green was killed right before Christmas in 2006, just a few streets away from Marianne's home. Cheryl wasn't a gang member, but she was killed by gang members. And Marianne knew that Cheryl's murder was motivated by hate.
We have had a history of gang problems in the area. Nothing as serious as the death of the teenage girl, which occurred in 2006. And when that occurred, the community just said enough is enough. We can't lose another child. We can't lose another person because of the color of their skin. And so the community said, this is it, we're done.
Cheryl Green's murder touched a nerve. FBI Director Robert Mueller joined local leaders to announce a crackdown on the 204th Street gang. Now this Latino gang that targeted African Americans is essentially out of business.
Marianne and her neighbors got down to business as well, hoping to make even more changes. They brought in community organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, the Human Relations Board, and worked with the Los Angeles Police Department to focus on younger kids. And this is one of the results. It may look like a vacant lot to you, but to the kids who live here, it's a safe place to play when school is out. What's more, it's also a summer job for older kids. And because the LAPD has placed a community officer at the site, now there's a positive face to law enforcement in the community, someone the kids know and trust.
I think that we're going in the right direction, and we have a lot of support. Truly, we do. You know, as I said, good things come to good people. We had many people come out to help us. Human Relations, County Human Relations came out and helped us and gave us some money that we were able to hire the kids last year. We have ShareFest, which is coming in last year and this year. We also have Linwood Christian Church that's in there. We have the GAP program, Gang Alternative Program, which is now working at the second grade level. So we're starting prevention, intervention. So.
Bottom line, the community stood up to hate crimes when it joined forces with law enforcement to make positive changes. It's a proactive approach that begins with a safe place to play, and it seems to be working. Crime is down, and some of the kids who have older brothers and sisters in gangs are choosing not to join. In fact, when we visited, a 3rd or 4th grader named Ray came up to us waving his report card. He'd gotten all A's and B's. And Marianne tells us that's really something, because Ray's dad and his brothers are all gang members. There's a difference between a hate crime and a hate incident, but both should always be reported because an incident is often the precursor to a hate crime.
A hate incident involves non-criminal activity, something that still feels terrible to those that are listening or those that are experiencing the actions of the perpetrator. but it doesn't rise to the level of a criminal activity. For instance, if somebody was yelling terrible racial slurs, that kind of yelling in general is protected by the First Amendment. But to the people walking by, it still feels very violative and criminal to them. That's how it feels. But because it's not a criminal act, it can't be criminally prosecuted. However, it's very important that law enforcement document these hate instances because later they may be very useful in the prosecution of a hate crime.
Well, a hate crime is a crime or an attempted crime that occurs because of a victim's race, nationality, ethnicity, religion. It can be perceived, for instance, say an individual is an Armenian, but the suspect is under the belief that he's Hispanic, and he assaults him because of that. That's what a hate crime is. Then you have hate incidents, where they're not actually crimes, but they're documented. A hate incident, for instance, would be a billboard that says KKK, where there's going to be a meeting at a park. Well, somebody might be offended by that, but as long as there is no property damage, you have the right of free speech. But if there were a complaint from some citizen in the community, we would document that as a hate incident.
Many people talk about the First Amendment in conjunction with hate crimes, and you will hear people in public say, well, the First Amendment protects that, and it doesn't. We have many crimes in California that involve speech, and they are not protected by the First Amendment. So, for instance, annoying phone calls. We can prosecute the action of the annoying phone calls without the words. We have something called criminal threats, where it's words alone, but I don't have the right to threaten to kill you. So with hate crimes, if you use language that either shows your motivation or threatens another individual, and you have a crime, then you're not offending the First Amendment in California.
Here's something you might not know. You can be the victim of a hate crime even if you share the same race, gender, or sexual orientation as your attacker. Now, let me say that again. You don't have to be different from your attacker to be the victim of a hate crime. Remember, a hate crime is all about perception and motive. So you can be targeted because of who you're with. It's called hate crime by association.
No fucking way. No fucking way. Not on my watch. What the fuck?
That nigger man. Pull up.
That damn girl, no niggers carry diseases. Stupid cunt gonna get all fucking infected and pussy and shit and
Hey! Well, look at what we have here. A couple confused lovers.
What the hell you doing, boy?
You guys just keep going on,
Just leave us alone, please.
You want to be a welfare mama? That what you aspire to?
Get out of here.
What have we done?
Hey, man, we're going to call a cop.
You go ahead and call the cops. They ain't gonna protect you.
What?
Think that's gonna happen, girl?
Cunt.
Shut up.
Hey, man. That's
Shut up.
Closer to here. What, man? Listen, I'm right here. Look, man. You got
a whole
get back here.
Listen, you race train whore mouth. You got to stand behind your
big truck. You must have a little dick, man.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to sit around smoking weed and eating chicken all fucking day, you have an
maybe if you wouldn't stop fucking your cousin right here.
Just leave us alone. Just get out of here.
You little tiny dick with a big
at least my family's white.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, man. Come on. I'm right here.
So you get that boy back to his porch.
Come out. Shut your fucking whore mouth. Go back. Go back and make it.
For every nation, bitch. Take that here.
Got someone here to right here with.
Yeah, it looks like she might be hurt.
I'll put us out.
These guys just came by and we were just
We weren't doing anything, man. We were just sitting there, and they threw a bottle and hit her in the head.
I need you to calm down.
Okay.
Calm down a second,
No.
sir. So I need you to calm down.
Page 251. We're going to be out on 2 in River City Park.
These guys came up in a truck. We were just standing there. We weren't even doing anything. And they started screaming shit and calling me the N-word. They threw that ball and hit her in the head.
Threw the bottle and hit her in the head?
Yeah, and then they drove off.
Okay, I need you now. We're going to need you to calm down and help me out here because we want to find out who did this, okay?
Right.
First off, a general description.
Huh?
Need a general description. Were they in a vehicle? Were they
were in a big truck, like a big Ford truck, red truck.
Okay, hold on one second, sir. Ma'am, you're going to be okay. Okay,
Sir, if you could just step over here for me.
Okay, what's your name?
Okay, go ahead and give me a description of what happened.
These guys drove up. We were doing nothing. We were just standing here, having a good time. And these guys drove up and were just started screaming stuff, called me the N-word, and they were mad at her for being with me. And
okay, what do you mean by the N-word?
They said, "Hey, nigger, you shouldn't be here. What are you doing with that white woman?" and all this crap like that. Called her a cunt and said, and I was like, "Hey, man, we don't want any trouble." And they're like, "Oh, well, you got trouble." And I was like, well, just get the fuck out of here, All
right, if you could tell me a little bit more about who it was, that way we can put out a description of them, then we'll get the rest of the information.
They were in a big truck, big, red, fire engine red. It was like a Ford truck.
Okay.
Probably 80s or early 90s or something like that.
Like a 250 or 350?
I think like a 350.
350? Okay.
And,
I know you're upset. That's a horrible
I didn't get the license plate number.
Okay.
There was an L in it.
Who was in the truck?
Two guys. They were in their late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
They were wearing baseball caps.
White
males.
Guys? Okay, white males. Approximately 30 years old, you said?
And they had one of those flags hanging in the back, the racist ones.
What's that? The Confederate flag?
Yeah. The Confederate flag, and like I said, they were just, we were just standing here having a good, we both had the day off. And
did you see the direction that they went?
They went driving that way, but he threw a ball and hit her, and I just went to her.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have got their license plate or something.
Okay. What I want you to do, I'm going to have you talk to my partner. I'm going to put a description of these guys out. Okay.
All right.
Go ahead and talk to my partner.
You okay, baby? It's going to be all right. Okay.
Okay, sir, just a little bit more information. I got most of what you told him over there. Okay, you said arguing between the two of you. As a physical, did you fight back with him, arguing with him?
We didn't. I never touched them at all or anything like that. We were yelling back and forth. They called me some names, her some names. I called them names. But then they threw that ball and hit her in the head, and then drove off and said, "Ha ha," and knocked her out or something, and drove off. And I was going to chase the truck, but I saw she wasn't moving, so she's all right now. But
okay,
it wasn't that long ago. It was only 5-10 minutes. You guys should be able to get them.
Okay, we have our other units looking in the area to get them. Partner, looks like we got a number 1 at 245 here.
Okay.
We also got, it's going to be a hate crime against her because of her association with him. That's why the attack took place. So,
okay, with the racial slurs?
Yeah, so we'll put that out, the BOA, we'll put that at 245 with enhancement of a hate crime.
Okay.
22.5.
Okay. Age 251. Looks like we might have a possible 245 with the enhancement of possible hate crime. So if you could put that out also on the BOL.
The thorough officer does this. First determines, is it a crime? And it is a crime. It's an assault on another human being. A bottle was thrown. So the crime has been established. Now, what happened to cause that bottle to be thrown? And the officer's going to ask those questions. Was there an exchange? Was something said that explains this behavior? Did the victims do something to cause this? And as the officer tries to determine why the crime was committed, the officer will no doubt learn that there were racial slurs first. And that explains that the perpetrator, the suspect, was assaulting these people because they were a biracial couple. And so it's not some sort of a mathematical equation, well, the attacker was white and the victim was white. No, it's bigger than that. This victim was attacked because of an association with someone who was African American.
Because a bottle was thrown and it hit the woman, this incident turned into a hate crime. But even if this had been simply an incident, you still want to document it and write a report. That's because a lot of times hate crimes will follow hate incidents. And by documenting the incidents, you may help to prove a motive later on in court. Hate crimes are hurtful, humiliating, embarrassing, and confusing to the victim. That can be especially true if the victim is a person with a disability.
There's a very high crime rate against people with disabilities all over the state, all over the country, all over much of the world. Most of that crime is never reported, much less the perpetrator apprehended. How much of it is hate crime and how much of it is not, no one knows for sure.
People with disabilities, and when you talk about people with disabilities, there is a different groups of them. You have people with developmental disabilities, like people with autism, cerebral palsy, people with mental illness, schizophrenia, people with bipolar disorder, physical disabilities, obviously in a wheelchair. You have people in the deaf community, people with sight disabilities.
Research shows there are several reasons a person with a disability is targeted. Many perpetrators think they'll never get caught. Another reason is fear. The perpetrator is afraid of, repulsed, even disgusted by the victim's disability or by the way the victim looks. Or it might be because the victim is perceived to demand and receive what the perpetrator thinks is special treatment for the disability. And finally, there is a perception that people with disabilities are inferior or weak, that they deserve to be victims or to be taught a so-called lesson.
One of the reasons that we have not always provided people with disabilities with the equal protection of the law to which everyone is entitled is because officers are not trained often in how to interview people with disabilities. The key factor in that, I believe, is to credit their statements. It may take them longer to say something, you may have to listen to them longer, but you can believe what a victim or a witness with a disability says just as much as you can believe anybody else in establishing probable cause.
Interviewing a person with a disability takes patience, and a lot of times officers depend on family members, neighbors, or even the suspect for information. Don't. You should always talk with the victim, and be prepared to take your time. It's not going to be a typical call, and it won't be a typical conversation. You may have to call for a sign language interpreter or make some other accommodation just to communicate. So, it's important to work with the disability community and meet with people with disabilities before there's an incident. That way, you'll know what to expect and what you can do to make sure that the victim is heard. And taking your time, making sure you communicate is even more important when the victim is a child.
Just shut up, all right, man?
Hey, I was in here first.
I don't care if you were here first. I make the rules, all right? You get that, you little spaz? Do you understand that?
I was finding wolves and Mom told me to be polite and treat our people.
Shut the fuck up, man. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. Do you get that, you retard? It doesn't fucking matter. I make the rules here. Watch what I want, not you. Sit in your corner. Don't say anything. I don't want to hear from you, man. Fucking piss me off. All right, you don't belong here. No one said you could come here. You have no right to be here. Go home. Go home where someone cares.
I was in here first. I
don't care if you were here first. You want that to be your head? Shut up. Sit there. Don't say anything.
I just want to watch my show.
All right, you're not going to watch your fucking TV. You don't even know what's going on. You can't even say your alphabets backwards, you fucking retard. Get out of here. Go. Just shut the fuck up, man. Look, dude, you Mongoloid, you little spaz, just shut up. No one wants to hear you. You're not gonna watch TV.
What's going on right there? I think she was the one that called. Ma'am, are you the one who called the police?
Yes.
What's going on?
Yes. My daughter and I went in to use the laundry room, and there's this jerk in there, and he's causing a lot of trouble, and we know Nick, and
Nick. I can hear what's going on here. What's your name? Tika, can you go with my partner for a few seconds? Just for a few seconds. I'm Elizabeth Edward. What's happening?
Nick is a little slow, and he's watching TV in there, and this jerk is coming in there, and he's calling him a fucking retard and a spaz, and he's getting physical, and it's really scary. And I'm
okay. Now Nick lives here. Who's the other guy?
I've never seen him before.
You don't even know his name
or
anything like that. Never seen him before.
Right.
Okay. So he's calling him a retard. Anything physical going on?
Yeah, and I think you should get in there.
Okay, we'll get in there right now. We need to get in there try to contact both of those people in there.
Nice to meet you, okay?
We'll be back to talk to you. If you want to just stay way over here, don't come up here.
Thank you.
We'll be back with you in a second. Hi, what's going on here?
Fucking idiot's being an asshole.
Are you Nick? Are you Nick?
Yes.
Okay, sir, I'm gonna have you step on out. Sir, come on
on,
step
for
on out
what?
with my
Why don't we
partner.
leave our stuff here, please?
Step on out
For
with
what?
my partner.
Take him out.
Sir,
He's
outside. Step outside with my partner.
Outside, right here, by the fence, please. Face the fence.
Nick.
What's your name, sir?
Tom.
Tom, I'm just going to pat you down for any weapons, okay? Can you just
For
place
what?
your
I
hands
didn't
behind
do
your back?
anything.
Okay, we're going
Stand
to
right there,
determine that.
stand
We'll
right there.
figure out what's going on, okay? No worries. Can you spread your legs for me just a little bit, please? Thank you. Do you have any weapons on you or anything
No.
like that? Okay, are you on probation parole?
Yes.
You are, okay. All right. You got an ID in here somewhere?
In my wallet.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Is that okay?
Guess.
Okay.
You're king of the streets, right?
If you don't mind
How are you,
walking with
Nick?
me this way. Excuse me.
I'm okay.
You okay? What happened here today?
I was just watching my show. He came in and turned the channel off. He starts to yell at me. My arm, my face hurt.
The reason that we're here, did you have an argument inside with someone in the laundry room?
I mean, he was bugging the shit out of me, and I had to tell him to stop, and he didn't want to listen. What am I gonna do? Like, I mean, he doesn't listen, so I had to yell at him. Yeah, what?
Okay, who's the he that you're referring to?
That fucking weird guy. Fucking, whatever his problem is, I don't know.
Is this someone that you know? Is this an acquaintance of yours?
No, he's just a stranger, and he's being a dick.
Okay, and why is he being a dick, to use your words?
He doesn't know how to share. I mean, like, you know, like he was watching his TV and changed it, and he started just getting stupid, and I was like, just shut up, dude, just mellow out, sit in your corner, and he wouldn't, and he just kept saying weird shit and laughing at me, and
Okay, is this an adult that you're speaking to? You're asking someone to sit in the corner? What was the meaning by that?
I just wanted him out of my space.
He was calling me bad names.
What
He
kind
was
of bad names?
Freaking spaz.
What else?
I'll F you off and I'm just scared and shivered and I'm all beat up.
So Nick, did he hit you?
Yes, he hit me physically.
Okay, but you're okay.
I'm okay.
Okay.
No, I
Okay.
want him to go to jail for
Okay,
life.
great. Okay, if he hit you and you're hurting and he's calling you all those bad names, he will go to jail, okay? You want him in jail, correct?
Yes.
Okay, let me just get more info from you. I just need your ID.
Fuck, he's not like human. He's like half of a human. He doesn't think, he doesn't have a brain, he's a waste of fucking tax-paying money.
Are you basing this on something that you observed in there about him?
What?
Is there something about his look or his demeanor or something that he said to you that caused you to use those words against him?
Well, I mean, just calling it how I see it. I mean, it's the truth.
How do
What do
you
you want
see
me
it?
to call him? Normal?
How do you see it?
How do I see it? He's
Yeah, I'd like to
less
know.
than a
You sound
human
like a
being.
smart
He
guy.
does, yeah,
Okay.
he's less than a human being. The average human can like say stuff, respond in normal situations. He can't.
Okay.
He doesn't know how to act, and I tried to be as cooperative as I could, but what do? How do you get across to guys like that?
I guess he was drinking too much.
Oh, so he brought this in, the spear in.
Yeah, he brought that in.
Okay, so he was drinking while he was doing his laundry and you're over there trying to do yours?
Yeah.
So did you use those words towards him? Did you call him a mongoloid and
Yeah.
a retard?
Yeah, well, what else am I gonna call him?
Was there any violence?
I mean, I had to push him away from me. I mean, I didn't,
When you pushed him away, why were you pushing him away? What happened?
because he doesn't listen.
Okay,
Do you not get that either?
Okay, hang on. Stop.
Mom, he's okay. Thanks for your help.
Back here and we'll
you
figure
can
out what's
actually go
going
back
on.
to your
And I know
apartment.
you're ticked off.
Is there any way you can make sure that he gets home?
He's
Okay,
okay.
he's in there. He's fine. He doesn't need any medical attention.
What
So
did he do?
we're gonna take care of him. But he's kind of shaken up. But you can go in there and talk to him. Okay, make sure he
Okay,
gets home. And if I have any more questions, I will call you or I'll
So
stop
how
by
do
your
you
apartment.
correlate to that incident
Yes,
that was going on
we will
in
take care of
there?
him.
How does
Okay.
that correlate?
Thanks a lot for your help.
He can't function in the world, and it's not my problem, you know? He needs
What's up, partner?
All right.
Tom, I'm going to have you sit down over here. I'm going to talk to my partner for a bit, so let me get you over here. You can just put your back up against the fence so you're a little comfortable. Have a seat. Be careful. Yeah, just relax there for a second, okay? What's going on?
All right. Apparently, he came in there and started causing a commotion with Nick.
Okay. And Nick's
Nick-
the gentleman that's inside.
Right. Nick
Okay.
is mentally challenged, but he's really coherent and he understands what's going on. So apparently, what's this guy's name?
This is Tom.
Tom comes in with his laundry, brings in some beer. Nick was telling me he's already been drinking. He was drinking a beer when he went in there. And Nick said that he changed the channel of a program that he was watching. Nick feels he was in there first, so he should be able to watch whatever program's in there. Well, apparently he changes it. Nick gets all upset, and he starts calling him a retard, a freaking spaz. He ended up actually hitting Nick on the shoulder and the face. So
Any injuries?
Not any physical injuries, but or visible injuries, but he said he hurts. So, and he does want him to go to jail.
Okay, so he's willing to sign a citizen's arrest.
He will sign
and that
it.
would correlate what you're telling me. It matches up with what Tom has already said, because he did admit to calling him names. He did say that he was a retard, and I tried to pinpoint down what he meant by that. So he has kind of corroborated in his own mind, in his own sentences, what you're telling me that Nick has said. So I think that we'll go ahead and take him to the station. And do you need any more help before I leave with him?
No, he's fine. Nick is fine. He doesn't need any medical attention. But yeah, you're right. This is on the lines of a hate crime.
Absolutely.
And a battery mixed in.
Okay,
so
good.
He's going to jail.
Okay, I'll take him over to the station then, and I'll meet up with you
Terrific.
later
All
for
right,
the report.
I'll get back with you, and I'll talk to Mom again, get some last minute info, and see how Nick is again. He is shaken up by it. So.
All right.
Alrighty.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get him up. Okay. Tom, I'm going to go ahead and have you stand up. Okay, and you're being placed under arrest.
For what?
We'll discuss more of that when we get into the car. I'm going to take you over to the station and get some paperwork done.
What's going to happen to him?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to the station, okay?
Under the law, if you have an actual or perceived characteristic of disability, gender, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion or sexual orientation, or if you associate with people with one or more of these actual or perceived characteristics, you are protected by hate crime statutes. Notice that homelessness is not a protected characteristic.
Homelessness is not, and it's not in the state, under any state law, nor is it under any federal law. However, the investigation doesn't stop there. Just because someone is homeless doesn't mean that they are not a victim of a hate crime. So it's important to continue the investigation. Sadly, many homeless people have issues of mental illness. Some homeless people are physically disabled. Some homeless people are also happen to be people of color, people of religion. So as a result of all of that, you have to carefully determine what was the motivating factor for the perpetrator. What did he perceive them to be, and was that perception the reason that person was targeted?
Remember, a hate crime is a message crime.
Homeless people don't have support. They don't have the network. They may be hesitant to call law enforcement, and because these people are maybe more hesitant to call law enforcement, they become easier victims.
Dude, this guy's over here all the time. Like, all the time. He's perfect. He just asks for me to change all the time, but he just sit there. He's
Fuck
like,
that, man. We're gonna fuck him up big time.
Yeah, we're gonna get it ready. We're gonna put it on YouTube. And we're gonna blow bum fights out of the world.
We're gonna fucking million hits in one day. Go.
Okay, ready.
What's a million? Okay, hold.
Ready?
Go for it.
Bum number 1. Click.
Hey, man!
Buddy! No, peace! Ow! Oh, he stinks! Oh, he fucking stinks, man!
Shit for breakfast, dude.
No, peace!
Yeah, come on, get him up here. Let's take a picture. Kill the cat.
Hey, get up, dude! Get up, dude! Look at this! I caught one!
Fuck.
Take a picture. Nice. Oh, dude, he fucking, that's why he stinks. He ate shit for breakfast.
You're one ugly motherfucker. What is this?
Hey, that's still his house.
Is this your house? Tell me, what's the mortgage on this thing?
Hey, check it out.
Do you pay rent?
Hey,
peace, fucker.
Hey, look it. I'm sheltered.
He is
sheltered. I'm a sheltered young man.
Okay. I think he uses that as his dress or like closet or something. That's definitely not a house.
This is not me?
No, that's no.
I can break dance on it.
I wonder if he does. BBB, bum breakdancing.
Dude, the guy smelled so bad.
Hey.
I don't know. I'm gonna take a bath for weeks.
It smells like my brother's breath in the morning.
Yeah, shut up.
Hey!
Crap.
Hey guys, what's up?
You missed it, dude.
Missed what?
There's this homeless dude over there. We totally beat his ass and took his house.
Dude, we fucked him up. We did. And all his worldly possessions as well.
Wow.
We got him good, so it's cool.
Huh. Yeah,
work
video
is,
if you
work
wanna
is
watch
done.
it. Wow. Yeah. That's his backpack?
Well,
Yeah.
it's mine now. It was his.
Okay.
Yeah. We have it right here for what? Yeah, it's gonna be hilarious, man. We're gonna stick that stuff on YouTube.
On YouTube, man.
And we're gonna be like the next bum fights.
Yeah. Huh. We're gonna fucking blow bum fights out of the water. So is he okay down there?
I hope not.
Hey, do me a favor, guys. Just have a seat right here. Just have a seat.
We do something wrong?
Just have a seat. Hey, partner, you want to go check him out?
We're kind of just doing you guys a favor, right? The guy's a piece of shit, man. I mean, he's been here for like weeks. He fucking stinks.
There's fucking kids around here.
He's like, well, yeah, he's like a disgrace to the white race. He's
all right.
Who gives a fuck, really?
You got it on your phone too, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
You
It's
gonna
right here.
put that on what, YouTube? You said?
Yeah, man, we're gonna get 1 million hits.
Let me check
in
it
a
out.
day.
Hand me the phone.
Okay.
What happened?
I'm not bad.
Not bad? What happened to your face?
They hit me.
They hit you?
I'm not bad.
You need me to call you an ambulance?
No ambulance. I'm okay.
You okay? Okay, relax.
I'm okay. No ambulance.
So, why are you guys doing this?
Well, the guy's been there like for 2 weeks now, and there's kids that play around here, so we pretty much wanted.
Yeah, for the kids, right?
We wanted to get on video pretty much on YouTube because we've seen bum fights and stuff like that. We're gonna make like $1 million on it.
Fucking blow bum fights out of the water.
They took my stuff.
Who's they?
Bad boys.
Bad boys?
Bad boys hit me. They kicked me. Two.
Two of them?
One kicked me. Took my picture.
Yeah.
What's your guys?
I want to get more of a production value instead
Yeah.
of that stupid phone.
Ian and TJ Productions. What is it? Ian and TJ Productions. You're looking at the next Spielberg and Coppola. I'll have to check that out, man.
They call me homeless and stinky.
Almost as stinky.
I'm not bad. They're bad. They're mean.
All right. Well, I got two guys stopped over here. You think you could stand up and take a look at them and see if that's the two guys that did?
I'm okay.
Okay.
You can be in it if you want.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I hate cameras.
No, really. We don't have access to tasers, and that's hilarious.
Yeah, to do that shit? Oh, God.
And my bag. They got my stuff.
Is that them?
That's them. They got my stuff.
Have a seat over here back there. Wait.
You ever use a taser?
We could test it out on homeless Hank.
We gave him
Probably
a
not the
name.
best of things to do, guys.
It's harmless, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey, partner, how is he? Stand by, guys.
They did exactly what they said they did. Beat him up, took his stuff, and
Yeah.
made a few racial comments to him.
How bad is he?
He's all right, but he's kind of beat up.
All right. Sounds like we might have a hate crime. Welcome.
Yep.
Hey, guys, do me a favor. Stand on up. Stand on up.
All right.
Go and turn around. Turn around.
Try and put your hands on your back.
Put your hands behind your back.
Are you serious?
Yeah, spread your legs.
What the fuck? What exactly does this fall under? I mean, guys.
Don't spread your legs. Hold up one sec, partner. You don't have no guns or bazookas, right?
No. Bazookas? Are you kidding?
Spread your legs.
All right. Sorry. Yo! Whoa!
Right. Do me a favor. Have a seat over here. Yo, phone. Mine. In today's technology, the officer needs to pay attention to cell phones because not only do they have records of who they called, they have text messaging records, and many of these phones are cameras. And so, believe it or not, people have taken videos and pictures of the victims that they have victimized. And so, cell phones provide a very good source of evidence for law enforcement.
Taking into consideration that every average individual now who has a cell phone, 9 times out of 10 has the capability of taking either still photographs or video. We're seeing it a lot more with younger individuals who, for instance, have seen things like bum fights. And it's more like my experience has been copycat type crimes. I've had cases where individuals have been assaulted with baseball bats as they slept, and others who have been assaulted with M80 firecrackers as they slept, and with their intent to, and they have actually videotaped these particular crimes with the intent, after being interrogated, to put them on YouTube. So it's a lot more commonplace than a lot of people realize.
Beyond cell phones, there's the internet, and you won't believe some of the hate sites that are out there. A lot of people, especially teens and young adults, have MySpace or Facebook accounts. They're easily accessed and could be evidence that shows bias. Remember, a hate crime is the only crime in which a prosecutor must prove motive. So it's up to you as a first responder to do a complete investigation, to uncover that motive, that bias, and it all starts with the victim.
Probably the best evidence is information that they received from the victim. So they need to conduct a very thorough interview as best as they can. And they need to be accurate in terms of statements said by the victim as reflects in their police reports. Often officers are maybe hesitant to use certain words or phrases because they don't want to offend anybody. But it's most important for them to put down exactly what was said, because that's going to be good evidence for the district attorney. The other evidence is physical evidence. Not often enough do we take enough pictures, especially in the age of digital cameras. We can take a lot of pictures, and I would encourage officers to take more pictures. Collecting evidence, either collecting it yourself or having your crime scene people collect the evidence properly so that it will be admissible in court. And I think those are some of the basic things that we need to do to have a good case for the district attorney.
You want to ensure that you take the time and effort to comfort this particular individual and understand once again that you're there to assist them and to help them. Like I said, it causes a fear that most other crimes you don't see. People get robbed, people get burglarized, but to be assaulted, say, for instance, because of your race, because of your ethnicity, because of your religion, really tears down at a community. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us to make every effort to solve these crimes and to ensure that victim that we're looking out for their welfare, their safety, and the community's welfare.
Hate crimes are different because, one, they're message crimes, and they not only affect just the victim that was victimized, it affects the entire community. So it's important to be one with the community so you can receive information from the community. Their crimes are out there. Those crimes occur to affect whole communities. So it's really important. It's unlike a regular crime. A regular crime only affects the victim, but a hate crime is a message crime which affects the whole community.
Hate crimes are message crimes. They affect the victim, their family, their community. So if you suspect a hate crime has occurred, make sure that you document everything. Words, graffiti, even tattoos. Ask for MySpace and Facebook accounts and passwords. Take a look at cell phones. We all know a picture is worth 1,000 words. Take your time with victims, especially if the victim also has a disability. And let the victims know there is help available for them and for their families. Something else, know your beat. When you take the time to introduce yourself to the people who live in the area that you patrol, you become a human being, not just a badge. It establishes a sense of trust between you and the community. And that's important in any crime, but it's especially important when a hate crime occurs, because hate crimes, again, affect entire communities, not just one victim. I'm Mark Bailey. For Post, thank you again for joining us.
And every single person who witnesses or experiences or hears about a hate crime either relates to it personally or knows someone. So it is a way of attacking all of us at once. And it's a way of us questioning ourselves what's happening in our community.
We're there to serve the community. We're there to protect those that can't protect themselves.
A hate crime against one is a hate crime against all. It is a direct attack against a community.
When a robbery happens, or burglary, someone's merely a victim of a theft crime, the response is, oh, I'm going to have to be more careful. I'm going to have to lock my house. I'm going to have to hold my purse closer. And you believe that if you do these things, you will be safe. There is no safety net for hate crimes. If someone is targeted because of a perception of their characteristic, they are vulnerable 24/7.